Matthew. I work for ZEIT as the head of customer success. As it says on here, I am based in Glasgow, as I had to run away from England after Brexit. Made no sense to be there anymore. And I'm a massive lover, as everyone is of course, with coffee and pizza. So this talk is about, a couple of things. First of all, ZEIT now, and secondly, NextJS. But perhaps more importantly, how the two come together and really, as a front-end developer, give you superpowers, which is always great. So ZEIT now is what we like to term the easiest way to deploy websites. For those familiar with it, you might be aware that it is just a single command. If you want to deploy an application, you type the now command, you hit enter, and you're good to go. So the push to deploy feature is something that is through the Git integration. A lot of people are going to be using Git, and we like to give people options. If you want to deploy a project without being on Git, you use now. If you want to set up the Git integration, you push, it's deployed as well. As is kind of the industry standard now, we've got free automatic SSL. It is 100% production grade. We've got some really, really big clients with massively important workloads, and it works without a hitch for them all the time, of course. And our key focus is static first and serverless functions. But all of the talks so far today are focused on the likes of Nuxt, which is great. And as front-end developers, primarily I'd imagine, we're pretty good at putting that code together, but sometimes the concept of an API and writing that ourselves for the first time can be a little bit tricky. And the idea behind now is get your static done and then expand it. Make it even better with serverless functions, and we'll have a little look in a moment at how that works. So NextJS, again struggling on the resolution slightly, it is the easiest way to develop React apps, which of course makes sense for the easiest place to deploy applications. It handles going to production. One of the key things for a long time with React was we've got to create React app. How are we going to take this further? We've got React scripts build. Is it production ready? Do I need to do any more? Is there any more optimization I need to handle? And that is what Next does. It handles that for you with the likes of code splitting to make it really straightforward. The other thing, which I think Next is probably best known for, is server-side rendering, which allows you to do that really simple. And it means that, again, it's something with React that can be quite difficult to set up. But with Next, it's built in for you. If you want to use it, you can use it. And if you don't, perfectly fine. You've got static exporting. The way that works is there's a method inside of Next.js. It's called getInitialProps. If you're using getInitialProps, you're opting into SSR. If you're not using getInitialProps, you're not. And that kind of plays into how we work with ZEIT now as a platform. It's very much convention over configuration. We want you to write the code that you want to write. We don't want you to then have to tell us, well, because I've written it this way, I want X, Y, and Z to happen. You're more than welcome to, but we believe more in sensible defaults. It has file system routing, which is really key. Routing in React, you can go a number of different ways. This one's just built in. And as we'll see shortly, you have a pages directory, and from there, that's your routing. It's done. Again, you can handle it the way you want to if you want to go beyond that. But file system routing is a pretty straightforward thing that's easy for everyone to get their head around. It's got TypeScript support as well, which for a lot of people is great. I think everyone loves TypeScript. Setting it up, plugging it in with Webpack, the tsconfig, maybe not so much. Out of the box, you start a Next.js project, you're good to go with all those things, and they are completely opt-in if you want to. So we've got an example, and this kind of shows various aspects of Next.js project, the different ways you can use it, and perhaps highlights a couple of the key benefits. So we'll take that away first of all. This is our Next demo project. And what we've got at the base of it really is just an index.js file. That is the home page you're going to land on. You're going to get there. And as you can see, it's a simple form. You enter your name, you get a lovely greeting. It's a very, very nice application. But let's say you want to expand that. You want a little bit more functionality. And you want to I don't know, have an API, which is always good. You can do that really easily, and that's done through the use of an API directory. Now this again is zero configuration. It's all convention, it's all file system routing. So if we look at the API static file, what we do here is we just start index component again, but this time we're sending a post request. And we're sending it to /API/user/name. And that is a serverless function. So it's very, very straightforward to look at. This serverless function takes a request and it spits out a response. That's all it's got to do. Anything in there, it's completely up to you how you want to handle it. What we've got there is express helpers as well, because if you've ever written a Node.js application, probably 99% of the time, you might have used Express. In fact, can we get some hands up if you've ever built a Node.js application without Express? 2 hands. I commend both of you, because it's so much better without. So that is your very basic serverless function. You have a request, you send a response, and that is it. And that's all part of your Next.js application. And what that means for you is that you don't have to worry about a server. You don't have to worry about other dependencies. It just really simplifies things. And it allows the front-end developer who's very, very competent in JavaScript, but perhaps lacks a little bit of back-end knowledge, to just get straight on, write some code, worry not about configuration of servers, and just make things happen. So we've got some interesting features with this. If we look at a slightly different example, the only real change here is that we are not doing a post request. We're just going to send it to the API user name root. Now, the interesting thing here is how this happens on the back end. Now, you notice the usage of the square brackets there. What that signifies is that this is a path segment. And therefore, it means you can send it to anything. You can make the request to API user test. And on your rec query object, under name, it's going to be test. So you've got plenty of options. It's really straightforward to make that connection there. The other things that are really interesting is we've got import, export syntax, and all the Babel and Webpack goodies. So setting up Babel, Webpack is enough on a Next.js project. Going that step further and doing it for a Node.js project as well, it gets a bit complex. It's time-consuming. You just don't want to do it. By using the API directory in a Next.js project, you're getting all of that for free. You can use it as you would in a regular front-end project without any worry at all. So in this example, we use create_greet. Now, create_greet is a utility function. Hence, we created it just so we could show the import, to be fair. But the important thing is when you have an API directory, everything you put in there is going to be an endpoint. Anything you put in there. Except you can opt out of that behavior by prefixing your directory or file name with an underscore, and then all of a sudden, it's not an endpoint. It's a utility file. You can reference it if you want to, but you don't have to. It just means that you can have sensitive information if it's required. No one's ever going to be able to access it for you. So, moving on from that one, ideally we'd like to deploy it. Now, I would like to tell you how great the now command is and show you how it's done, but the internet, as I've tested earlier today, it's a little 50-50, and it might time out. So, what we've got is a deployment that we made earlier. Now, with this deployment, it's in now. As soon as you make that deployment, you've got a project in your ZEIT now dashboard, and you can access it, change settings on it, and most importantly, you can add domains. And what that means is that configuring a domain, purchasing a domain, adding it to your project, and making it available, it really couldn't be much simpler. So let's take a quick look at the dashboard. And this is me, this is my ZEIT account. I've got a couple of things there. And I want to go to the next demo. And I don't want it to be available at nextdemo.now.sh. I want to give it a special name that we'll all remember the day by. So I'm just going to go to domains. And I'm going to call it, I think we'll go with Jam Session Talk. And by default, using the ZEIT Now platform, you can use the .now.sh suffix for anything you like. Providing it's not taken or used by someone else, you're good to go. You can have whatever you like. So we're going to add that now. and then 10 seconds, we're going to find that it adds the domain to the project. Okay, it's got a valid configuration. The deployment should align shortly, and it will mean that when we click the link, we have access to our project at the custom domain that we specified. So, there we have it. And it's at jamsessiontalk.now.sh, which is great. And what you can do, of course, is you can bring your custom domain from anywhere. You can verify that, attach it to a project. And what that means is when we look at the Git integration shortly, and you merge to the default branch, maybe master, your production deployment will get pushed to your production domain, and all of a sudden, everything's updated. You haven't had to do anything. So we've got adding domains, and we've also got the Git integration. And the Git integration is, for me, I'd say, what makes ZEIT now really, really easy to use. And for teams, especially at ZEIT, it certainly speeds up workflows. It gives us flexibility. It allows us to make lots of changes, multiple people to work on the branch, and everyone can have their own staging URL. So what we're going to do now is having a look at an example. Again, I did prepare earlier. And this is the Git integration. So if you make your push there, on a branch, you're going to find this lovely little bit here. It's going to give you the option to inspect it, which will take you to the project and the deployment in your ZEIT Now dashboard. But it's also going to give you the preview. And that preview link's really useful because it means that you've always got a staging URL that any changes I make on this pull request, or at least to this branch, they're always going to be available here. So you can keep working away, working away. Someone wants to see what your changes were. They're not going to go, oh, Matthew, can I have a staging URL? It's like, we've already got it. You can just use it straight away. It's not going to change anytime soon. And again, it's all about increasing the efficiency of how teams can work, making things quicker, and just making things easier. So along with that, we've also got something below, which is quite a recent addition. And it's an integration completely free of charge that you can use with any of your ZEIT Now deployments, along with, I believe, 6 frameworks, and that's always expanding. And this is what we call the deploy summary. Now, the deploy summary is good because it allows you to see changes. And if you're like me and you have no respect for a pull request and you make changes to probably 30 different pages at the same time, there's probably a good chance that you lose track of that. And you're not sure what's happened. And therefore, you expect changes, and then you find, oh, there's changes over there. So we've got an example of this because it's a little bit more realistic. And this is me the other day removing an old component that I really didn't like anymore. And what we've got here is we've got the deploy summary. And it tells me these are all the routes. These are all the endpoints that have changed. And this is really good because I'm not guessing anymore. I'm not having to think, all right, well, which route did I change? Do I need to check this page? Is it looking OK? And the other thing as well, if we go back, is if you want to find yourself with a quick check, see how that's going to look, you just click on it. And then all of a sudden, you can see there, right, this is how it looks now, whereas previously, it would have looked, of course, slightly different. So it allows you to have your visual changes inspected immediately, and it means you're not going to miss anything out, which is always good. The other thing that we've got with the Git integration is the ability to, like I said earlier, deploy to a production domain. You've added that domain to your site on the ZEIT dashboard. Now, what happens when your beloved pull request finally gets merged? It will immediately be made a production deployment, and your production domain will therefore show the most recent one for you. But at the same time, we all make mistakes. Me especially, and it means that with your Git integration, you have that level of security and safety, and you can push changes and you can merge fearlessly, because if you have to go back and think, you know what, maybe we didn't have it so right, you've got the lovely Revert button. That's all saved us many, many a time in GitHub. But at the same time, how is that behavior? How does that work? And what does that mean for you? You click Revert, and your previous production deployment, which had no issues, is the one now made available at your production domain. And it just means that you can merge quickly, easily, simply, and if there's ever an issue, you're going to be looking at a couple of seconds where that issue is live, and then it will be replaced with a working version that didn't have the problem. And that is it from me. So it's a little whistle-stop tour of Next.js and ZEIT now, how the two play together, and quite frankly, how simple it is to create APIs from your Next.js project with all the goodies included. Thank you.